Hey everyone, it's Your Natural Dog with Angela Ardolino, and today I have a guest who's not only a friend of mine, but man, do I love having conversations with her about, it's like pick a disease and we start talking about how to treat it holistically. She is a vet tech that's worked with many of a very renowned veterinarians holistically, integratively. And she also is the mom of Bruce Wayne, the pug, who is one of our favorite little spokes doggies for CBD dog health, who suffers from IVDD. But she is talking with us today about Lyme disease because not only does she suffer from it, but her dog also got it and she was able to treat it holistically. So we're going to have that conversation about how to find holistic treatments to treat it and or help with the symptoms and diseases that are caused by Lyme disease. Next, stay tuned.
Introducing MycoDog, a line of mushroom extracts combined with adaptogens like ashwagandha, astragalus root, and Bacopa monnieri, made specifically for dogs. The mushrooms in our tinctures are grown in the wild in the Pacific Northwest and are triple extracted from the fruiting bodies of the mushrooms. These tinctures are meant to support dogs with dementia and canine cognitive disorder, breathing and respiratory issues, and autoimmune diseases and even cancer. Click on the link below to learn more about how MycoDog can help your dog live their very best life naturally.
Hey everyone, it's Your Natural Dog, and I've got Krysta Fox here. Oh wait, you're not Krysta Fox anymore.
I technically am.
So are you like Krysta Fox-DiRe? Is that how I say it now?
diagnose.
Sorry. I knew you before you got married.
Yeah.
But we're talking about Lyme disease, and there's several reasons why, you're my expert on it, because unfortunately you have it. Your dog got it, and you caught it and treated it, and you're kind of like my go-to expert. I love to be able to call you up and talk about it because I think it's really important, because what's so funny about Lyme disease is that I knew about Lyme disease in humans before I knew that dogs could even get it. And I was like, well, of course dogs can get it. Dogs get bitten by ticks a lot more often than we do. And knowing what a confusing and hard to treat and detect disease this is, makes me go, oh my gosh. So when we've got a dog that's just got these random things wrong with it and we don't know, it could be Lyme disease. But
Absolutely.
it was one of the first things that I found out cannabis helped with, because as soon as I announced that I was going into the medical cannabis industry, of course, people wrote me from all over going, find out if it works, it helps with this. And of course, it was all those diseases like Lyme, like fibromyalgia, these diseases that so many people suffer from, some pets suffer from, and have no answer or treatment for, because a lot of times they are affecting our endocannabinoid system, or we have an endocannabinoid system deficiency, which is causing the random pain all over. So I'm excited to talk to you about this. First of all, for those of us who don't know, what is Lyme disease? How do you get it?
So Lyme disease is a spirochete, which is just a type of bacteria. It's a spiral looking bacteria. It's a very nasty little bugger. And it's primarily transmitted by ticks, depending on, who you talk to and what you read. There's some debate whether or not spiders and mosquitoes can carry it as well, because they're bloodborne vectors. But the primary host is ticks. And usually nymph ticks are the worst carriers for it, because they're the smallest and they sit on whatever their host is, whether it's you or your dog, and you don't see it until 24 hours later, where they've already infected you or your dog with the disease. So
Wow.
The nymph ticks, the little tiny ones, are the really nasty carriers of it.
And there's no way really of knowing that you got the disease or not. Is if you were to find one of these ticks on you or your dog, do you go get a test? Would it show up? Would you even know?
Yeah. So, I mean, most people think of like the bullseye rash as your prime, telltale sign that, something's wrong. But on dogs, that's very, very hard, if not impossible to see unless they bite it on like some hairless part of their belly.
So you mean like a bull eyes rash happens on your skin where the infected tick bit you?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. It's a very, it looks like nothing else. It's very hard to
like ringworm, where you're like, oh, yeah, that's ringworm.
Exactly. But there is places where you can send it in to get it tested to see if it actually has Lyme or not. But part of the problem with that is the main bacteria of Lyme is so it's Bugdorferi, which is the guy who discovered the disease. But there's actually like 30 different strains of Lyme, and unless you go to a practitioner that really understands Lyme, they're not going to understand that like it's not just that one. There's a bunch of different variants of that same spirochete that can infect your dog.
And then doesn't it even like cause other diseases and issues? So you don't even know that it's Lyme causing all of these other secondary infections or diseases or something like that. I remember reading about it.
Yeah.
Why it's so hard to diagnose and treat.
Yeah. Most people or animals that get exposed to it don't have any symptoms and they fight it off. But it's the people that, like myself, that had a bunch of other underlying co-infections going on in my body, that the Lyme disease kind of just, was the straw that broke the camel's back. So it's very hard to say, oh, it's Lyme causing this or Lyme causing this, because it's usually a whole conglomeration of things working together to cause all this inflammation in your body. So, I mean, when I was first hospitalized when I was 15, it was like an episode of House. They had no idea what was wrong with me. They did spinal taps and x-rays and blood tests. And I mean, I went through the gamut.
And what were you feeling?
I went to the hospital, or I went to the ER for a headache, and they gave me, like IV Tylenol or something. It was like the first migraine I ever had. And then, when you go to the ER, they say, come back in a couple days and go see your primary care. By that time, I had a fever of like 105. I was hallucinating. I was extremely ill. And so then I was hospitalized for 5 days, and they just did test after test after test, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And finally they cultured my blood and they diagnosed me with bacteremia, but they never told anybody or myself. I still can't get my hands on my own medical records to figure out what they actually cultured, but they treated me with the primary antibiotic used to treat Lyme. I got better, but I was never really healthy again. I always had chronic immune system issues. I was sick just all the time and very, very painful all the time. So
wow,
it's tough because I mean, I'm sure how I, grew up and I didn't really eat great. So I'm sure my gut was super inflamed and a host for all sorts of other things that when Lyme came in, it just was like, hey, let's have a party and just, cause a nightmare in this body now. So that's how it worked for me. And that's seems to be where most research is pointing, why, you can get exposed to it, but not develop Lyme disease. It seems to only happen in people who their immune system is compromised, and same with animals.
So then
we feed animals crappy food and over-vaccinate them.
So what are treatments are out there that actually help for people like you? And I mean, I feel like, of course, people with dogs or horses or pets are going to be more prone to getting Lyme disease because they're going to be around ticks more. So
of course,
what are you doing? What is the treatment?
So the conventional treatment is doxycycline for usually like 2 or 3 weeks in people and dogs. Because doxycycline is effective at, putting Lyme to sleep. And it's also a good anti-inflammatory antibiotic. But away from the conventional world, which is the way that I got treated for it once I was actually diagnosed with it in my late 20s, it was a series of herbal medicines and homeopathics. Now, Lyme disease is a very tricky, they call it the great imitator, because whatever you're treating it with, it'll change its cell membranes and its receptors so that treatment no longer works. So when I had it, I went in every 2 weeks, and my doctor used applied kinesiology to figure out which herbs would be best suited to me at that time. And every 2 weeks it would shift. I would usually be on 2 or 3 different herbal medicines at a time. in addition to a bunch of homeopathics. And then I was eating really, really clean as I was getting treated. So it depends on the doctor. I mean, there's a Cowden protocol, there's the Burner protocol, there's Tobin's protocol. People use essential oils. There's lots of, more natural protocols that don't disrupt your microbiome. Not to mention, there was a scientist who actually took Lyme disease in a petri dish, treated it with doxycycline, and saw that it stopped moving. But he was curious. He was like, well, did it actually die, or is it just latent? And he washed the bacteria of the doxycycline and it came right back alive.
Yeah, I read that it literally can go hide, becomes like a cyst and just hides out until you stop whatever treatment is, and then comes back out to play when it feels safe.
Exactly. And that's why people who do things traditionally, they pulse antibiotics and they're just on antibiotics basically forever, because the antibiotics don't really kill it. They just stop it from replicating while you're on that antibiotic, and then the cycle just continues and then changes its membranes, comes back out. And it's tough too to even detect a lot of times, because after about 6 months, it starts to burrow in your organ tissue, and then you're not going to come up positive on any blood tests because it's not actively circulating in your bloodstream anymore. So it's a very tricky, nasty little bug. I hate Lyme disease so much, and I hate ticks because I hate Lyme disease so much. It plagues so many people and animals, and they don't even know it. They're being treated for something else. Illnesses.
So you caught it in Bruce. How did you catch it in Bruce?
So he actually had a tick on his neck that we pulled off. And at that point, I had just started out as a veterinary technician, and I worked in a conventional practice. So we tested his blood immediately after, which is completely pointless. And then I waited another 6 to 8 weeks, tested it again, and it came up positive. It only came up positive once, and then it went away. Every single test I've done for Lyme disease for him, including like a quant C6, comes up with nothing. So it's very tough. I put him on doxycycline because that's what I was, that's all I knew, that was the only option. So I think because I caught it quickly with him, and he's small, and at that point he was pretty healthy, I think he dealt with it okay, and didn't seem to have any symptoms. But then in 2020, I gave him conventional heartworm prevention, and he developed thrombocytopenia. And whether or not the conventional heartworm treatment was the cause, or it shut down his microbiome in such a way that allowed a tick-borne illness to come back up, I can't say. But all the evidence showed that he had another tick-borne illness, which we believe was a strain of Ehrlichia. And pretty much every tick-borne illness, Ehrlichia, anaplasmosis, Lyme disease, you name it, bleeding diseases are very, very common hallmark symptom, disease progression, I should say, not symptom. But I treated him the same way my Lyme disease was treated. We used a series of herbs over about a 3 or 4 month period, and then he completely got better. So it depends on who you're using to treat your Lyme, how much they know and how much they understand, because treatment can be very, very tricky. And if you just go the conventional route, you're going to be stuck in a rut.
Like most things when you turn to conventional, is that it's like kind of a quick fix and not addressing the underlying issue. We have to take a short break. When we come back, I want to talk about what that treatment was, what to do if you suspect it, and then what happens with dogs where it's gone too far, and we do have one of those situations where they're basically going to suffer from this for the rest of their lives, what we can do to help them with that also when we come back.
I have a 15-year-old dog named Harley, and he's beginning to suffer from dementia, CCD. He was barking and whining and getting lost throughout the house in the middle of the night, which was really heartbreaking to watch.
And we're back with Krysta Fox-DiRe, her new last name. You kind of sound like a movie star now. I like it.
Really?
Yeah, I really like it. It has a nice,
Oh, thanks.
like you married one famous guy and now you kept that name and now you married another famous guy and now you're just.
I kept the hyphen.
Yes, I did. So we're talking about Lyme disease, both how it affects humans and our pets. And I think it's probably one of the more undiagnosed things that happen with humans. And I can imagine if it's happening on humans that it must be happening like crazy on dogs. Are there any signs at all
Well,
I guess when you can't figure out what something is?
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it sits undiagnosed, but diagnosed as arthritis or generalized inflammation. It sometimes, like in cats, it's nearly never diagnosed, but hyperesthesia could totally be a Lyme disease issue. Fever is like a common initial sign, but it's not something that's going to be like a chronic issue. Swollen joints, lack of appetite, depression. The shifting lameness is something that I think even conventional vets will go, this might be Lyme disease. When dogs seem to be intermittently lame on one leg, then it's the next, and just overall kind of sore, and like you can't really localize where the pain is coming from day to day. That's a good indicator of Lyme disease, but without, doing a blood test or seeking out a practitioner that's really, seasoned in this, I think it's very hard to get your dog accurately diagnosed and properly treated.
So this is something like if you've got a dog that you can't figure out what's wrong, is it going to be something that you have to ask for to be tested in a blood test, or is it automatically tested in a blood test?
It depends on the vet. I think most veterinary practices use either something called a 4DX, which is through a laboratory called IDEX, or an Acuplex 4, which is through the most common diagnostic lab used, and that's Antec. But I know the clinic that I first started working at, there were a lot of budgetary things, like if people just wanted a heartworm test, they could get that. But I think the standard practice is to do a 4DX, which tests for heartworm, Lyme, Ehrlichia, and anaplasmosis. So if your dog is getting a regular test from your vet and you're not sure, I would just ask. But most vets do the 4DX testing as their standard heartworm test, just because heartworm and tick-borne illnesses are, just as common. One is just as common as the other, so it's good to just do that test and rule out that.
And then on that test, what does it show you? It shows you that they could or they couldn't, or
so that's the tricky thing is it's an antibody measurement, so it's antibody or antigen depending on the test, but it can show that your pet has had Lyme, like that the treatment didn't work so well and they still have antibodies. If treatment wasn't completely successful, there's still going to be a large amount of circulating antibodies. If treatment was more successful, there's less likelihood that your dog is going to have circulating antibodies because the disease is taken care of and there'll just be low levels of it. But it's tough to know. Like if we have a dog that tests positive when they got it, there's really no way to know from that test. It's just a yes or a no that they have that issue circulating in their bloodstream. Other than that, unless you see, I happen to work for a very gifted practitioner of applied kinesiology in the animal world, and he is able to figure out on a deeper level, is this a chronic case? Is this something more recent? How strong is it? Where is it more localized to, since Lyme disease likes to hang out in the liver and kidneys? So it's a good measure to at least know yes or no, but it's definitely not the end all be all.
So if you do, or if you do find out that your pet has that, is this like something that you can find this vet and go, okay, I've got this test done, this happened. Now can you tell me whether it was chronic, whether they've had it a long time, and then come up with a treatment plan?
I think there are a lot of good holistic vets.
So this is something that a holistic vet would always be able to help with? Or most of the time?
I think most of the time, yes. I think all of them, depending on their training and what they specialize in, there's certain doctors that are more passionate about the protocol. But I think most holistic doctors, even if they're not, dead set on one thing or another, they're going to help you seek the best holistic treatment for your dog versus just doing doxycycline. And I'm not against doing doxycycline. I mean, it is a nice way to kind of take down the bacterial load, but it just isn't the solution to the problem. So I think if your vet doesn't know anything other than doxycycline, there are, if you go on the AHVMA website or I think it's the International College of Applied Kinesiology, and try to find a vet that does applied kinesiology, that would be a really great way to try to find somebody who can, give you a little bit more of an integrative approach when it comes to treating the disease for your dog.
And as we know, CBD, or full spectrum hemp extract, is great for decreasing inflammation, for supporting your immune system, and has antibacterial properties also. Have you tried it on yourself with any?
Oh yeah,
luck?
I take a lot of CBD every day.
Good.
I have all 3 horse tinctures that I take. I take
Yay.
these during the day and calm to sleep, and then heal depending on if I'm more painful during the day. I'll take more. But it's interesting because I've been in Lyme disease support groups on Facebook and stuff for many years, and I noticed that when my Lyme disease kind of peaked in my late 20s, I could no longer smoke cannabis, and like my brain just went on fire, and I just felt really strange. And I looked it up in the group, and there is actually research showing it does have very powerful properties against Lyme disease, and some people theorize that that's why certain people with a heavier bacterial load of Lyme disease can't handle cannabis, because there's like that die-off issue. So for me, CBD works a lot better, whereas the THC was I think too strong. It just kind of pushed a little too hard too quick. So if I do THC, I do like a 1-to-1 FICO tincture.
And a 1-to-1 is what is most recommended for that reason. There's actually a book, we'll put it in the show notes, that was written that I found way back in the beginning that is literally about cannabis and how it helps Lyme disease. And first of all, you don't want to smoke it anyway if you are sick, because you are also inhaling carcinogens, because you're actually burning things all together. If you want to use it medically, using it as a tincture or as a FICO, a crude, is much better. It's hard to find 1-to-1s in a FICO or a crude, so that's why a tincture works so well. But the same way that it helps you, it helps your pet also. So if you do end up having a pet with a chronic Lyme disease, is that what you would call it? Where they're constantly maybe having it pop up and disappear and pop up because that's what it does, or different little issues and problems. Besides a full spectrum hemp extract, what else would help them? You mentioned that there are other herbs that helped you. What else do you think is a good helper? Or if you get Lyme, I would do this. I think this helped a lot.
I would definitely make sure you or your pet takes a good amount of omega-3s, because there is evidence showing that it was actually, I think the research was done in dogs, that the fatty acid profiles of the dogs that showed the worst Lyme symptoms in Lyme disease had a very imbalanced fatty acid profile. So omega-3s are super important. We already know how much they will help with, fighting inflammation, but that's really important. I think also using homeopathics is a great idea, because they're so safe and they're very effective, especially for these types of things, because there's very specific ones for this. So you don't have to go through as much work trying to find a constitution. There's things like ledum and hypericum, and those are perfectly safe to use. There's a lot of essential oils. Usually they're hot essential oils like oregano, clove, cinnamon has shown amazing killing properties, or just eradicates Lyme. But how to use that effectively in your pets can be tricky, because you want to make sure you're using good quality oils, you're diluting them properly.
Remember, everyone, just like you want a QR code or a third-party lab certificate, QR code that takes you to a lab certificate on a label, you want those same things for your essential oils. And before you pick any type of oil, you want to make sure that it's a pure essential oil and that it doesn't have anything else in it. And if you can get a lab certificate showing you that, then that's the best way. And then absolutely, they're pure, so you're going to want to dilute them, unlike CBD Dog Health tinctures are already diluted in a MCT and hemp seed oil. So these usually need to be diluted even more because it's either the pure oil or small and not diluted in anything. So absolutely. And were you taking them internally?
Yes, I was. For Bruce, I did things like aroma boost on him.
Awesome.
I think, with animals, it's tough because you don't want to make them uncomfortable. So with oils, you kind of have to play around a little bit more versus, yourself. You're just like, okay, I'm just going to take this, put it in a capsule and take it. So I did a lot of the doctor that treated me used oregano oil as capsules as part of one of my 2 week
Which is
periods.
a wonderful antibacterial.
Yeah. So essential oils are an amazing tool. And I mean, there's a lot of good research now showing how effective they are. It's just a matter of getting that research out to the general public. And, it's cheap. It doesn't make any money. So the pharmaceutical companies don't really like those types of things. So
exactly.
I think,
they can't patent it, make billions. Yep.
Homeopathics, herbals, essential oils are always going to be kind of, under the radar, but there's definitely people who know how to use them properly to treat. I would say, other than, the omega-3s, keeping your diet clean, avoiding gluten, inflammatory foods, low quality, poor quality, poorly sourced foods, just making sure you're eating as clean as possible. That really made a huge difference in my life. Was just, I don't eat gluten anymore. It just made a big
Me
difference
neither.
to cut it out.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those, we live in a world now where not eating gluten is pretty easy. It's not like, oh God, there's nothing out there. It's really easy. So I think just living a clean lifestyle, making sure you got plenty of omega-3s on board, using homeopathics, and doing the same for your dog. And it's even easier because we control what goes in their body, and they don't put up too much of a fuss if we just
they don't
give them.
They don't sneak in the freezer for an ice cream treat in the middle of the night.
Exactly.
Well, Krysta, thank you so much. This is such a wealth of information, and I'm sure it's going to help so many people and pet parents, because I know that it is it's very painful and aggravating not to be able to treat something like this because it's all over your body and it just hides. So being able to have something that's holistically going to help and not cause more harm is really nice. And thank you for sharing your story. How do we get in touch with you? I know that many of people probably know that she's the owner of Pug and Hound Apothecary. So if you're ever in the area, what area is your store in?
Geneva, Illinois.
Illinois.
West of downtown Chicago.
But Krysta also writes for CBD Dog Health, for my website all the time because she's such a wealth of information and an incredible writer. And of course, she treats her dog, Bruce, holistically and has had unbelievable success with him too. But where else can they follow you? I know you're on social media.
Yeah. My store is probably the best way to get in touch with me. Whether or not you want to text our store, call, Facebook message.
And you also do consults, right? Someone could call you and you could help them through their dog if they're suffering from Lyme disease, or even them.
Yeah, and that's really the best way to get my full undivided attention, because I'm like spinning many plates. So if you book a consult with me, that's probably the best way. And I have a good network of doctors that I work with, so it's not like I'm just kind of pulling this out of thin air.
Oh, I know.
I love the doctors I work with because I get to ask them questions all day long. So this sort of stuff is great because I get to pull in their useful information and refer to them and work as a team. So I'm definitely happy to help with that.
Awesome. So find her at Pug and Hound Apothecary on social media, and pugandhoundapothecary.com.
It's just pugandhound.com. PUGAND.
Oh, even better.
HOUND. Yeah.
Awesome.
Easy.
Thank you, Krysta, for joining us so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.